This awesome greenhouse was recently shared in our community, and today we're going to break down exactly how this frame was made so you can recreate it if you want, or just learn some building techniques. And this comes from Frank, which is really awesome, and he made this entirely out of 3/4 inch EMT conduit and maker pipe connectors, which if you haven't heard of those materials, EMT conduit's a tubing you can get off the shelf that's made of steel, and we manufacture connectors that allow you to put pieces of EMT conduit together in all kinds of different ways, and you can build awesome projects like this greenhouse from Frank. This is really cool, and a lot of great techniques in this that we're going to break down. And I think this is a really great design if you want to, create a greenhouse and if you need one for your garden. Essentially, there are a lot of verticals going up into the roof here, and it's just a really great design. But essentially, on each side there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verticals. It looks like that go up and that bend over, or kind of up. And it looks like, I would say that's a 45-degree bend that goes up. And then there is another bend up here, probably 135 degrees, I think would be the complementary angle to achieve this bend. But by incorporating bends here using just a handheld pipe and tube bender, then you won't really have to, increase the cost of the frame with the connectors, because you would need a 45 and a 135-degree connector for each of those peaks on the roof. But instead, you can just get the handheld pipe and tube bender, which is about $50, I think, at this point, somewhere in there. And then you could have that for future projects, and then you could use it for all these different bends in here. But essentially, it looks like that's how he created, each vertical that goes up and into the roof. And I imagine this is going to be, it's going to be hard to create this all with just one piece of, one 10-foot piece of conduit. I think it's too tall of a frame to accommodate that. So I would imagine this probably is split up somewhere. And if I had to guess, I would say it's probably split in the middle and then goes across, and it's probably split in between the two bends. If not, that's how I would recommend doing it, just to make it easier, so you're not trying to get both of those bends on one piece of conduit perfect. You could kind of go from the ground up to this first bend here, and then you could cut it after that, and then kind of adjust the measurements as needed. And then you could build the top part of the frame that goes up into the roof, and then, like I said, cut that measurement based on how you get it, so it doesn't have to be exact and perfect each time. That'll help a lot. And then you could use the maker pipe coupling. I don't know if that's what he did here. Don't really see a close-up of the frame, but you could use the maker pipe coupling in this area to join those two pieces of conduit back together here, and they would just kind of go and stop inside of the coupling and have a little bit of gap between them. But breaking that up that way into those two different pieces would make it a lot easier to get those bends and easier to achieve this kind of roof. So I'm pretty sure that's what the technique he used. If not, I'd love to know if you're watching, Frank. But even if he didn't, that is a technique you could use if you wanted to recreate this. But essentially, we've got a bunch of verticals just like that going all the way up and just kind of bent. And I'm not going to highlight the coupling method each time. I'm just going to add these here just so we can see the visual of these verticals in place. And I think, like I said, there's 5 on each side, and those just go up and over like that. And of course, it's going to be mirrored on the other side. And then the other maker pipe connectors here that he's using for the framework, we'll just kind of go to the front first. And essentially, he's using the maker pipe T connectors here, and there's one here as well. And of course, all of this frame is just going to be mirrored on the other side. So there's going to be a T connector here to create this brace. And essentially, he's using those T connectors just to frame out this front wall. And if you're unfamiliar with maker pipe connectors, then you don't have to do any welding or drilling, anything like that. They just rely on a friction fit, which means some of the connections, we call them terminating pipes, where essentially they stop in the connector. And so that's what these connections here are. This tubing that's going from one side of the other, or one side to the other here on the front wall, is just stopping and terminating inside those T connectors there, and is just going across. And then the same thing up here, piece of conduit terminating in that T, and then going here, same thing on this side, of course, going to this side to terminate. But the difference is there's not T connectors here because he's using the maker pipe 90-degree connector, which, if you haven't seen, allows you to create a 3-way corner connection. So there's 3 pieces of conduit here in this part, or in this connector, where essentially you've got the one running continuously through the middle of it, this piece of conduit here that terminates inside of it, and then a piece of conduit here that terminates inside of it at a 90-degree angle, and then it sends this pipe down. And then, of course, he's doing the same thing on this other side over there. That's just mirrored. And then we'll come back to the gate and how he made that door here in a second, but we'll just keep going and following the conduit as we see. So there is the conduit terminating inside the next connector. And this one here is called the 180-degree connector, which works similarly to the 90 in the way that you have a piece of conduit running continuously through the middle of it. And you've got two pieces of conduit terminating inside the other side, or in the two sides of the connector. So it works very similarly here. The difference is this is just a 90-degree corner to create like a cube or rectangle, but this is flat and creates that 180-degree connection between these two pieces of conduit, and works really well in builds like this that are really long and you want to break up those long horizontal spans and add a vertical. That's the connector that I would recommend, and that's the 180-degree connector. And essentially just created or used 180-degree connectors to continue that same technique all the way down the walls, and then added a 90-degree connector there just to kind of mirror the same thing that we see on the front here. And then the whole thing is just mirrored on the other side. And then we'll look at the roof real fast before we look at the front gate. Pretty sure he used 180-degree connectors again up here to do the same kind of technique, where essentially you've got the two roof pieces of conduit coming in, terminating on each side. This is going to get kind of messy here with all these marks, but essentially coming in on each side. And then you've got the roof peak running all the way down the middle of the conduit, or the middle of the greenhouse, going all the way through to the front. And I would imagine he's probably got to use more couplings in here. That's that one that we mentioned earlier that joins two pieces of conduit together. Probably just, had to do that in different places just to kind of make sure that you get the length that you need. And then you can use the 180-degree connectors to basically attach that roof ridge pole down the middle to these two vertical pieces that are bent coming into the roof and attaching together in the middle. I would imagine that's how he did the roof, and that's a great technique for doing that. So that's essentially the main part of the frame, really nothing too complicated. You can notice that this whole frame is sitting on pavers here, which is cool, and a good way to give it a base without it sinking into the ground. And essentially all that's left is the framework for the door. So essentially to frame out a door, he just used MakerPipe T-connectors, which is that one that we looked at early on, that just joins those two pieces together. And the reason he did that is just to kind of create this rectangle. I'm going to draw it out here out of the build because it's getting kind of complicated. Actually, let me just delete this here real quick, and then we'll just re-screenshot it so we can break down the door. So essentially for the doorway, he's using the MakerPipe T connectors here and here on the outside of the door to create, basically just attach these verticals. So with those verticals in place, you can then attach the door, and he's using MakerPipe T connectors again to create this rectangle that's kind of made, and the measurements are exact to fit inside of this doorway that he just framed. And essentially just another T connector there, creating this rectangle. I'm going to draw on the inside instead of directly next to that, just so you can kind of visualize a little bit better. Hopefully this makes sense, where essentially you're just creating a rectangle to frame the door and then a smaller rectangle inside of that one, and that's what is actually going to act as the door. And then you just need to attach those two things together. And because these two pipes are parallel to each other, the pipe for the framework and the pipe for the door itself, those are parallel. So he used the hinges that are 3D printed from Billy from Northwoods Engineered, and those are just attached to the framework there. And those are pretty easy to install. You just use a drill and drill all the way through the conduit and attach those two pipes side by side. And there's a hinge pin in the middle so you can open and close this door just like any old other door that you would see. So that's really cool. And essentially how he made the doorways, we can see that he did the same thing on the opposite side, so he can get in either side, which is really cool. And then here's another shot of the framework we can see from the opposite side. Of course, the whole thing is just mirrored and looks really great. He said he did some pull-ups on this to make sure it was strong, and I think it's held up to some weather so far, some wind and things, which is really awesome, of course. If you wanted to increase the strength of this, I think you could do this same rung that's going all the way around down here at the bottom. If you wanted to just add even more strength to this, I think that would help a lot, but he said it's holding up great as it is, so you may not even need that. So really cool, Frank. And then of course we can see here it is with the greenhouse plastic draped over top of it. Don't see exactly how the plastic is secured to the frame. You could also use those greenhouse plastic clips that we have on the website. Those work well for this kind of thing, but it looks like maybe he's just got it draped over and then secured there. But now he said he's got this kind of this whole thing built. Now he's just going to modify the inside and customize the frame for what he needs with all kinds of different tables and whatnot. So really awesome build, really great greenhouse that's not too complicated, not too many different types of connectors, and just a really cool build. So thanks so much, Frank, for sharing that. I'll link this post down below if you want to see the pictures in more detail or ask any questions. You can do that on the community post or down in the comments here on this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, leave a like and consider subscribing. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.